And it's interesting. I was a kind of the karmic relation with the Tibetan people and the Westerners, and one thing, common observations, Westerners when they met Tibetan, during the 70s and 80s and 90s, I think there's something attraction, something kind of like a liking as a, and also, I mean, like there's many people in refugee situation. I think Westerners, doing that karmic connection, not only I think the dharmas and teaching, but even the regular people, Tibetans, when they met, there's something kind of like a harmonious connection. And I was kind of like reflecting, something culturally, religion or traditionally, maybe within the Tibetan, there's something that's, as a human, as an individual, there's some kind of naturally people kind of liking. There's something that happened through Tibetan culture and Buddhism. And for me, I feel like maybe after Lama Atisha came to Tibet, Buddhism already in Tibet, and when Lama Atisha came to Tibet, then basically I think he encouraged not to be too selfish. I think that's kind of like if I speak very simple language, kind of lojong teaching was I think the main thing that really shaped the society, not only the spiritual environment, as a daily in their life, the lojong, the mind training. And basically, in that, somehow, if we obsessively self-cherishing can be, it as a naturally having some kind of, not kind of like embedding that in part of the culture, part of the way you're living, have to be like reducing self-cherishing. Of course, there's a self-cherishing naturally will help there, but somehow that doesn't becomes the main, pillar of the life. I think that kind of like a message and that kind of like the daily living comes from that kind of like it doesn't mean like Tibetan people don't have self-cherishing. I'm not saying that, but I think this must be our thinking. What is the culture that tradition or that bring? Maybe there's this element, and there's some kind of like when we as a human being, when we naturally reduce kind of self-cherishing, I think naturally shines up our human beauty. I think that's kind of like a natural. I think it's nothing unique. It's just kind of like our human beauty is overshadowed by, that kind of like self-cherishing, self-grasping or self-cherishing. And somehow culturally, or it's not necessarily through practice and realization, but through the culturally, how it kind of lay out, when it's kind of have a naturally opening up, reducing. I think there's a naturally some level of a human beauty shines up. I think that must be like sometimes, when we say education, education, I mean like education, what is the real education? I think the compassion, I think real education is all the education curriculum should build up based on the compassion, because the knowledge, education, I mean like knowledge-based education. Can we say that? Knowledge-based education?
Yeah.
Knowledge is, I think it's easy these days. Education, what the definition of education, etymology of education, the word education?
To bring forth, I think it is, it's Latin, if I remember correctly, so you're soliciting the inside of someone to bring forth, to educate.
To educate means something,
Yeah,
bring,
I
something to bring. Yeah, I think knowledge is, even these days, everything's in your palm, your hand, knowledge, like the information. Yeah,
right here.
the information is, so something that, anyway, my key point, sometimes His Holiness will give a lot of advice for Tibetan people. So you have to not lose your, not the culture, you won't say, there's something, Yarab Josan, there's something kind of like a literal translation, mannerism, but it's something more than that. So you will say you should not lose that. And sometimes within the Tibetan, we say like each time that quality is getting worse and worse and worse. And one generation lose more, and next generation lose more, and that's kind of like a. So for me, personal thinking must be strong influenced by this Indian master, Lama Atisha, when he came to Tibet. Maybe when he came to Tibet, and I think because he's well known, and all the Tibetan masters came with for welcoming for him with a fancy things and like very, like overly kind of done. And when Lama Atisha saw all this Tibetan, he covered his head. I heard like he covered his head, like all this, all like scary. So he, I think from the beginning, he kind of shocked. He gave the, like something that's, something more deeper educating, more deeper awareness. I think that's kind of like it have a kind of like a spirituality, simplicity, genuineness, humbleness, something all together. All these things becomes much more true based on a less self-cherishing, like less self-cherishing. How we, in English, when you say self-cherishing, how you is considered as a bad or as a good, or I'm self-cherishing, we should self-cherish.
I thought it.
Self-cherishing.
Traveling for 2 years away that I didn't have seen before.
Yeah, I think also, although the situation is difficult, but external condition is difficult, but maybe internally there's some kind of, like when I was in South India, after I think I left 1977 from Kopan, and the conditions are very, very poor, very, 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 very. For 15 years, rice and dal for lunch, every day, rice and dal, rice and dal. But inside, within the things that practice, philosophy study, the different retreats, and there's something richness they kept in even though the conditions are really, there is something, so I think, I think something, but anyway, okay. Again, like, I think like for example, we as a human being, I mean, like intentionally, I say intentionally, kind of, let me put it, intentionally ignoring another people. I'm not sure. Let me put my thoughts. Basically, self-obsess. When we are like in heavy emotional difficulty, somehow everybody's fine and only me is suffering. Maybe there is, in that kind of state of experience, very clear self kind of like absorbs so much. Basically everybody's okay and I'm only suffering. When a self-obsess is, I need to do my things. I have to do that. What my responsibilities are, that I have to do. I'm not sure that not necessarily self-obsess. When self-obsess happens, maybe like when our entire energy is just focused into our own self. Basically, I feel when it's a feeling everybody's fine and only I'm the only suffering. And what will be like? I will say that will be self-obsessed example in a life. What will be another example with a self-obsess if we think about in our life? What will be the example like when I've been self-obsessed? I will say like when I feel like and I mean like when there's a heavy suffering, when there's like a deep suffering, not the suffering, general suffering, but there's like an emotional deep suffering. And that really pulls us into the self-obsess. But when I was kind of like a suffering, general suffering is in our life, we need to take care and that kind of things, is a common shared suffering. And during that time, I'm not sure we will be self-obsessed, neither taking care that universal general suffering to kind of overcoming. I'm not sure it's considered as a self-obsess. Something that I don't want to be cold, make sure these, okay. I think that's kind of like a responsibility, taking responsibility. Maybe the self-obsess happens once these are all taken care done. Then slowly once you get into when the suffering gets much more internal and once get heavier. And then maybe there's a self-obsess. And that's what I was thinking, self-obsess. What you're thinking, like a self-obsess, like once kind of like once we are very much internalized and everything, basically. And also I will say sometimes like how we message for our own self, negative way. Not positive messaging, much more negative messaging. And then that makes much more kind of like pulls you more deeper into down. And that's I think the perfect recipe for self-obsess. Yeah, I mean like generally, like also like again, that kind of like things that doesn't went in my own way and you want to be controlled into my way. And when this kind of not happening, there is a kind of created around that situation deep inner suffering, and that's the perfect recipe for self-obsess. Then like there's some kind of, maybe self-obsess is a self-stuck. What do you think? You are stuck in something situation. Anytime when you are in stuck into some situation, maybe that's the self-obsess. When there is a tiger coming, you fully pay attention for yourself, and the running, that's not necessarily self-obsess. That's a perfect right thing to do. There's a threat coming, you fully pay attention, you're fully, like running to take care. That's perfect things to do. Mm-hmm. That's also one condition, I think, the way the life was lived, give less space for going internal and projected suffering, very much projected suffering, and that's really perfect environment where that becomes self-obsessed. And basically, I think that in that case, basically you see, I feel like maybe everybody's fine and only I'm the suffering. I'm only, and that's, now there's, I think, we should look at several different things. Now, egomanic people, egomanic, like egomaniacs. There's a different, again, self-obsessed kind of different type of, in a different type of self-obsessed. Egomanic, that's again, I think, constantly looking for opportunity for self. There's something trying to feel that empty inside something, constantly looking for something to feel. Egomanic, something like very egotistical, I think naturally happens some kind of empty inside. And basically, I think that behavior starts to fulfill that. Constantly, karmically, I think that emptiness, that to. So in that case, it's not, there is that emptiness within the him or herself becomes the kind of like a chronic suffering. Chronic suffering. It's not that situation happens and then you get into the. So maybe, self-obsess have two different layers. One is a condition happens and you kind of fall into such a condition, and the suffering that's basically hold the focus, I'm only suffering. And there's basically whole thing is just kind of like hold it by self-grasping. And this kind of like egomanic is not the condition, it's almost like a karmically come with that kind of situation ever present, and every situation have to kind of like karmically driven to fulfill that, and every situation have. There's a kind of like a empty, and it's not relaxed, that constantly you have to refill that, constantly refill that. So all situations. So self-obsess, now self-cherishing, self-obsess, obviously it is a very, should label some kind of diagnosis, self-obsess, labeled, and I think it's important for us to, when self-obsess happens, I mean, we need to think for our own self. Yes, I think it's a right to think to our own self. And so we need to think for our own self very smart way. So that's everything, let's do it very smart way. Let's do it very, very intelligent way. Let's think of my own self very intelligent way. Let's think. So what will be that? And we like to do everything much more smart way. Yeah, that was a smart move, or that was intelligent. So that's we really want. So I think Bodhisattvayana, I think that's proposal of a Bodhisattvayana is like we can do that. We can still take care of our own self with a very smart way, very intelligent way. And what that will be without harming for another living being. Maybe even helping through helping another living being. So the proposal is something, I think is fundamentally self need to be taken care of. Okay. So anyway, self-obsess. Now in a Bodhisattvayana teachings, all the time is encourage. Now, I mean I mean, like from the Bodhisattva and the philosophy, how you define self-cherishing? How you define self-cherishing? Self-cherishing, basically we need to look at our intention. Fundamentally, I think, action itself doesn't have any kind of like a defining characteristic of a self-cherishing or cherishing another. So it's like, I think what that means, okay, that should I become like a, so my, individual person can be there, giving out there and serving out there, and from the manifesting looking like a, it's a helping for people, but him or her intention is much more towards to the fulfilling emptiness within our own self. Applying such an action, then it is still self-cherishing. You're giving so much, you're giving, but that giving is intended based on fulfilling our own, that some kind of emptiness inside. Externally you are fulfilling another, internally you're refilling that emptiness. If that becomes a motivation, then that action becomes self-cherishing, although it is a really giving. Okay, so self-cherishing is how we define as self-cherishing. Having, taking care our own needs, taking care everything. Is that self-cherishing? If that's self-cherishing, then like, yes, and then like, no, I think it's not right. I don't know. If you're taking care of myself, my, things, it doesn't necessarily become self-cherishing. And everybody should take care of themselves. And also, all the time giving, going there, serving. This defines cherishing another living being. It looks like, but is at the end, it comes down to if the motivation is not right. So fundamentally, it comes down to our human intention, isn't it? Intention. If the intention is to fulfill that emptiness, and then your action is a giving, that becomes self-cherishing, isn't it? So how it defines, so what I'm saying is fundamentally self-cherishing or cherishing another living being is not defined by the action itself, is defined by the intention, the motivation. How about that? What you think? Did you agree or? Intention. So
I think the important thing is the trace that leaves in your mind, right? How if you're giving, but it's only to make yourself look good, mentally, it doesn't lead to greater peace and compassion. It just feeds your ego.
Yeah.
So I think, in my head, it's very difficult to judge from the outside what people's internal motivation is, whether it's leading to greater peace and growth.
I think there's a story during the Buddha's period time. One of the rulers, make a huge offering for Buddha and his sanghas and everybody. I think it was and the first day, and I think the ruler kind of expecting some kind of dedication from Buddha. He has some strong expectation, but he's making this infinite offering for the Buddhas and all the sanghas. But Buddha really didn't dedicate anything. And he did this for like a week-long kind of ceremony and offering. And but there's one beggar, I think during that time, beggar was like so much rejoicing for the ruler, what he can do it for all these great things. And that person was deeply rejoicing. And then in the last day, Buddha, when he dedicated this person's merit who really kind of don't have nothing, but he was like so admired and rejoiced. So Buddha dedicate all the merit, this person's merit dedication. So I think. So now I think is now the question comes how I can have a good motivation to making my own cup of tea. So like let's go like I like my coffee, so I want to how I can make a good motivation is not just kind of like a natural movement. It doesn't become a natural movement. How I can plug some kind of intention. How I can so basically our daily life is a kind of cruise control, kind of like a repetition, or we can plug in some kind of intention. Like it's just kind of like it wasn't it's not so obsessed to having coffee. I want to have a coffee. What do you think? Like now here like a there's one offering. I think it was composed by Nagarjuna. I think Nagarjuna. Yeah, Nagarjuna. And there's one of the food offering, and you have this delicious food. And the first thing in the offering verses, it says, "I'll trying to see this as a medicine, because I'll take with this without craving, and I'll not take this for me to get strong and this and that and all the the things that, and I'll just to to remain this to benefit to to do the practice and so basically how we plug intention. So fundamentally it looks like the intention looks like the key important into our life. It's like intention. And now the question comes how much we put general intention. We might have a different responsibility that we have to do that kind of intention but do we have a kind of like a general intention? General intention, something to sometimes you're using words to survive. I'm not sure. That looks like a too desperate. I want to, like, what will be the general intention into life? Like what will be the general intention for the day-to-day basis? What will be the general intention? What you set up the tune for the day? Like how we're going to set up the tune your life. You set up with the anger, and of course the whole day will be anger. Like how you set up the tone for the life, for the day. So I think the motivation is somehow, motivation, something that's, of course, like for example, when you're taking this walk, and I'm just kind of, that, you come out with such a joy and relief. And maybe there's a very simplicity into that how many week? 9 week. You set up this general motivation, very simplicity. There's no any kind of pressure, there's this kind of very open and simplicity. Very open and simplicity. So maybe, and the action is physically you have to walk how many miles every day?
Not many.
Quite a lot, like it's not. And I think that simplicity in the general intention, in the motivation, and the action is physically maybe draining for certain extents. Maybe mentally it's because of there's not specific demand. you come out from that space kind of fresh.
Yeah.
So now I think, now the question comes for us, can we have this kind of a general simplicity motivation and kind of like a less fear-based of a motivation, maybe something mentally demanding, but we can come out with it joyfully. So basically, that kind of like a joy, you come out from where you give the credit. If you just do self-assess, okay, you take this 9 week. Physically, it's lots of demanding. You don't have a comfort, all this and that. You're all the time into the nature. But you come out with this kind of like an open and relief and the healed. Due to the walking, or due to not to have to do what you have to do when you are here.
That's a lot of it.
Okay, that negation, okay, something that, but what you have to do in where you are here is much more difficult for your mental, not necessarily to physical. Obviously something's difficult for mental can be effective, but what you did for 9 walk is not easy for your physical. You have to walk all the time. So in the action-wise, so my main question is, can we as a human being, that kind of like a mental demand with can be changed, having that kind of same demand, but after 9 weeks, you come up with a healed and a relief, positive, something physical demand. After 9 weeks, you can come with a heal and open and smile. But with the mental demand, not possible. Is that something possible? Am I saying clearly? What I'm saying is something. My main question was like, is this happen because of the action or intention? What do you think? That kind of like a healing and openness comes through because of that simple intention. Okay, I'm just taking a walk, go through this walk. This simple intention play important role to coming out with a healing and all that things, or all this healing and openness came up because of the absence of a mental pressure, or that's it, that absence, or all combination together. How we understand our own human motivation, I think this is also one area. So all that things when we're discussing, I was thinking like, what made some action really drains, what some actions really kind of heals, is because of the action itself by its own nature, or the way you're managing, or the intention, is that the whole thing making difference? Is much more open and healing. So like that's the one area, and in one area I was thinking like, we as a human being, are we fundamentally we are multitask, but we are limited because of the many different barriers that we created within our own self. We are capability to manage many things. We have this consciousness as a capability. We have this kind of like a supercomputer, can manage many different things, but whoever running this supercomputer kind of limit its own potential. Even is that the main question is that because of the absence of what we have to do over here, that makes the absence makes that kind of things, or even maybe we are capability to to make say that capability, what will be the fuel, what will be the power, through what can power that supercomputer, what's the energy source? Energy source has to go back to the intention, to able to make it that kind of space into our emotional level and our psychic level, to able to have that kind of capability. So So I was kind of one way of thinking maybe like when we do, also I like also going to pilgrimage and walking. I think is an absence of what not being kind of like a complicate, is making kind of much more kind of relaxed, or when we're walking, somehow cognitively we are much more kind of naturally expanding that space of our own awareness, because kind of due to being out there, movements of your body by nature is kind of not kind of like a crank, kind of squeezing. It's kind of like a natural. It's just kind of like a exercise. Is expanding our cognitive world, and maybe end of the day, maybe this is just creating more space is what makes us have a more space to breathe, have a more healing. Maybe that's the really what's happening, and fundamentally to able to create that space, cognitive world in our emotion. So the walking and pilgrimage, that simplicity, that present moment, in the result, some kind of like a cognitively kind of open in space. And we're using kind of strange cognitively space and open, but some kind of like a, what that really means. Yes, what that really means, cognitively more space. What that really means is maybe activity of our emotion and the cognitive to some kind of activity is reduced. Activity of like amplifying any kind of situation. What do you think? When we have an activity of a specific thoughts amplifying specific actions, when it is reduced, and then maybe there's a naturally, cognitively, and emotionally there's some kind of a space. And that space is so much uplifting for us. When we are doing walking and pilgrimage, we see many different things. Yes, our thoughts are all over, but it's just kind of like hanging around, but not necessarily amplifying anything. And there's not specific task, it is not amplifying anything. It's just kind of observing, it's just kind of taking that information and leaving as whatever we received, there's no any kind of amplifying. And because of that, maybe there's much more when you're doing kind of walking or, how we lose our present moment. What that means, present moments. When we are angry, are we a present moment? When we're like so upset, are we present moment or not present moment? It quite looks like present moment, no? So we use this word present moment. What that really means. When we are upset, when you say like a concentration, anger have a really good concentration. It's like cruise control concentration, like almost like a senior level of a concentration. So what's really means? What really means present moment? What really means that present moment? What? Okay, we need to figure out present moment. Absence of a continuation of. Okay. So.
I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
No. I mean, like present moment. We're using this terminology very popular. Present moment, like for example, you can have 10 different thoughts in the present moment.
That's right.
Can we have 10 different thoughts? If you can have 10 different thoughts at the same time, we can say it's a present moment. No, not possible.
I don't think it's possible.
Present moment means you have only one thought. What that means, present moment. We use this word so much, present moment. What that means, like one thought. Absolutely not like a digging that cannot be present moment. We know what is not present moment. We need to know what is a present moment. Okay, that's really heavy. Okay, emptiness, present moment. Present moment. If you don't have, then you don't have present moment. I'm more questions. What really defines your having? What's really okay?
Ahead of it.
Okay. So present moment is like you are not pausing your thought process. Is something like that? You're not. Is a flow. Present moment is you are not trying to control anything. You're not trying to bring anything. There's a natural flows happening. You're not digging into it. You have no control into. You're not trying to control in your thought, but you're not intentionally trying to digging into it. There's space, that kind of space, awareness. Even like a fear comes and goes. Hope comes and goes. When fear comes and you're stuck, when hope comes, you're stuck, then you lose the present moment, isn't it? Present moment, even the hopes comes and goes. Something that comes and goes. I'm just throwing there like present. No, I'm defining like not its own self, not trying to define the minute, which is this minute is gone already. Yeah. No, like how we define I'm experiencing present moment in emotional level, psychic level. Not trying to define the present moment itself, but the experience.
No thought, only awareness.
No thought, only awareness. What you mean that?
Like when one's meditating in a really good place,
Mm-hmm.
and your mind is very quiet,
Mm-hmm.
and you hear and feel everything around you, but hopefully your mind isn't off running a story.
So when you say awareness but no thought, thought means like not kind of digging into it, stuff like that. When you say no thought,
Yeah, it's similar to what Mary Grace is saying.
not grasping into it and not,
Perception without.
okay. You can have a discernment, no? You can have thoughts like this, that, isn't it? So present moment is like a one dimension of thought. Like it doesn't go like more than that. You just stay in one kind of like just kind of notice, okay, that's it. Is that some kind of like a less discernment, just minimum discernment of your awareness? Awareness kind of, you see, you're fully awake, you notice, minimum discernment. And is that the present moment? Huh? What's that? If you stay in that one forever, it's good. Minimum discernment.
I wonder if there is, your question, which is quite provocative, was anger.
Uh-huh. So like, for example, anger is not distracted, isn't it?
No, it's not.
It's focused.
It is focused, but it's not,
But it's not present moment at all.
It's not the present moment you want to be in.
Yeah, exactly. So
What's unstuckness? Like, what is that? Like, I don't know.
yeah, I think I
Does that
used.
make any sense?
Yeah. I mean, the key question will come when our thoughts are concentrated, when our emotions and everything are concentrated. Are we stuck there? Intentionally. Like anger can be stuck because you are so fixated. Then because of that, we can use word fixated. You're focused. They're fixated, and so on. So
Focus is different than stuck.
okay. Now anger is not not focused. It's a fixated.
I don't know. I think sometimes.
So like which anger? So we have to figure out present moment and concentration, or you're stuck. So what do you think? Anger is concentrated. Anger is the ultimate distraction, no? What do you think? Can you say anger is focused, concentrated? No, I don't think so. What do you think? It's the ultimate distraction, no? In the present moment, there's no... there's many, like, self-disappointment, not necessarily self-anger. And self-anger does not necessarily have to be self-hatred. There's many different layers, no?
Yeah.
And for self-disappointment can become, I wish, like what you in West you say, kicking your leg or something, that wish I have done that way or something like that. It's kind of like a change, motivate for change. But I'm kind of you know, like a present moment, due to the present moment, what kind of benefit is you have a space and time to able to experience any kind of detail and beauty, and you're able to appreciate, you know, like I think maybe that is the result of a present moment. I think itself is, that experience itself is not necessarily, I'm say present moment. Present, I mean, the word present moment. Yes, in a way it's a kind of present moment, you know, like you are ultimately, when we are not able to be a present moment, is basically once there's no space into our cognitive world or emotional world, which is fully kind of like flooded, and then we are not able to do any kind of like experience the present moment, you know, that kind of thing. So I mean, like the English present moment is much more referring to object or to the subject mind. When you say the word, when you say present moment, that expression is much more kind of like external or much more internal present moment. It's both, maybe.
I would say subject mind.
Much more subject, present moment, present moment. Is a be in present moment.
An aspect of that.
How about anger? Again, bring back. I'm totally absorbed.
Anger can do that too.
Exactly.
Just being a
Zen
fire,
anger or something like that.
you know.
Is,
But what we think what you think the main fuel for all the action is not right, that rage arises because of the action. Action becomes the condition, no?
correct.
And in my personal believing, that's not right. Is
And
that
if
becomes
it's opinion, then it's an opinion that's based, oh, okay.
so? Which is the, you know, that condition happened, unjust happened.
Correct.
That unjust, I don't believe into that one. I'm not believing into that one becomes the main trigger for the anger, that reasonable anger. Okay.
I see that. I mean, I hear that, and I'm really analyzing that and thinking, okay, there goes opinion again.
Yeah.
And that is a biased an opinion.
Yeah.
It's an opinion.
My belief
My belief or opinion.
yeah.
Yeah.
That is the
Everyone
main
is entitled to their opinion.
backbone of that unjust action is just kind of happened, but the backbone of that reaction is that action or that belief, that value that you carry.
The value.
Yeah.
It's
My
the value
value.
was triggered. The
Yeah.
value was the value of human.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I might even win a tie. I don't
So,
want to
so,
keep
so, so you know, I'm trying to getting like, what you're making point, anger is not present moment because it have a lots of self-grasping and that things. Like one question, like again, what really defines meditation? What really defines meditation? You know, like what really means meditation? It's in the Tibetan texts, you know, there's a one definition. What really means meditation means transformation of intention is a meditation. So I think there's sometimes like a really kind of and the today's like a popular meditation, like mindfulness meditations, and what really defines meditation. You know, I'm kind of like a, for example, when you have this 9-week retreat, when you walk through, again, basically we're looking for like this kind of like a healing.
Nice meeting you.
Please. Yes, please. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. I mean, like, let's look at from the body, speech, and mind. You know, when you're doing kind of walking, there's a simplicity of your body, there's some kind of simplicity of your mind, and obviously simplicity of your speech. And maybe one thing is that there are all three of them in alignment. Maybe that alignment, maybe that's the makes something healing. And maybe in our daily life, these are inlined. You know, sometimes, you know, the inline, you know, in physical, when your things are not straightened out, we get a strange problem. Alignment. Maybe, ultimately, maybe these kind of like there's a kind of like alignment of all your existence energy, body, speech, and mind, when you're doing walking meditation. Maybe there's all alignment of a simplicity of these three things. Maybe in our daily life, when you're not, is not the absence of not doing, because there's the alignment is there. So maybe in our life in daily life, maybe there's no alignment because maybe the mind is taking over and bodies are ignored. Maybe speech are taking over, you know, maybe something is ignored. So maybe that inlined state of our own existence creates kind of like a problem. And the healing only starts, you know, so maybe the retreat, maybe there's some kind of energy alignment. Am I making up that? I feel like, you know, sometimes when I describe meditation, I will say like, there is a synchronization of your mental states, synchronization of your mental state and your sense awareness, a synchronization of your physical body, mind and body, you know. And what kind of synchronization? Everything you're trying to be harmonious, not three separate different things. Everything somehow you're trying to bring together. And that's basically what I'm saying, the present moment. Present moment is basically, it's not so much like how our thoughts are walking and what thought doesn't do and what is doing about. Maybe it's not so much about the present moments, is the synchronizations of mind and body. And obviously within that there is what not doing part is obviously, you know, digging and so on. So it doesn't happen. It's a simplicity, maybe that kind of like alignment and mind and body. And that state of existence is the present moment, in alignment. What do you think? That's mainly when I try to introduce meditation, I will try to, you have the mind and body have to be in alignment. Particularly your sense awareness and your mental awareness have to be in alignment because they are all the time in balance. You know, so that's, you know, basically these three things, your posture, your sense awareness, your mental awareness, they're all kind of like harmoniously trying to be together. And that's the way we start the meditation, you know, like, so that's, if we go more specific, what is not doing and what is doing, the present moment becomes too specific. I think this word present moment is not necessarily to gear towards to the specific activity of the mind, but maybe the whole how it is embodying the mind and body combination. What do you think? That's just, I'm sorry, I'm just throwing that out there. Because the reason when I ask, like, it is a more subjective or much more objective, this kind of a description do exist in particularly in the Mahamudra. Doesn't says present moment, the word is in, like, it says exactly not going to the past, not digging to the future, and the present tadakisheba sornebas. So anger isn't, there's no alignment, is occupying all our own existence. So it's just kind of like dominating, occupying whole energy. It's just taking, there's no alignment, there's no, so I won't say, is anger is focused and concentrate? I'm not sure. It's the ultimate distraction, isn't it? Anger is like, it is a it is a rapidly going past and present and future. It's like a fast movement of past and fear and hopes, and isn't it? It's just like a fast movement. Anger is a fast movement. Craving is a fast movement. It's for us, it sounds like a present moment. It's like a focusing, but it is a so fast movements of the. It is a very energetic, very energetic, moving in the past, moving in the future, moving past, and there's a within that interaction, it is creating some kind of focus. Is that creating that focus is ultimate distraction, because that tension is coming from fast movement of awareness, thought movements of a past and future, past and future, past and future, and you're bringing that kind of like attention. It's not concentration. Is attention? Yes. Is a strong attention? Yes. It's not concentration. I think it's a strong attention because it is coming through rapidly moving past and future, and you have that attention, concentration. I'm not sure. Like, yes, why not concentration? We like to keep concentration. It should be more better. But in case we can have something is not created through that kind of like a process, past and future, like without creating from that kind of process, coming through very equanimity, very gentle, and you're able to. Maybe we are only able to create attention through. I mean, like, kind of like a long period of attention we can only create through that kind of movement, past and future, past and future, past and future. Like a breathing, we can bring our attention to breathing for very short moments. We cannot take as a naturally for weeks and weeks. Anger can go weeks and weeks because of there's a supply, that energy that's constant.
It's interesting.
It's interesting, yes.
Very tasty.
This is a tasty because of it constantly moving the past and the future. That movement, maybe that movement makes maybe tasty, interesting. Although you're looking into the same object, never get boring.
But it lacks that blanket of congruency.
Although you are having the same object, never bored.
Yeah. That's so terrible.
That's okay. So we decided anger is not concentrated or focused or not focused. What do you think? Anger is fully focused? Focused? Anger is focused? Yes, I think so. Anger is focused, then how we can say it's a distraction? Anger is so distracting. We'll say that, no, my anger is so distracting me. We'll say that. Then how can it be focused? Anyway, I'm not trying to debate ridiculous words. Huh? Huh?
It drive you crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Are we doing timing-wise? Is okay?
It's at 12:45. Maybe people would like to eat a little bit.
Okay. Anyway, today's chapter is the Shantideva's, the patient chapter. We have to be patient. Okay. Yeah. Let me just generally kind of like and I think we're going back to the like in the early 60s, 70s, and I think Tibetans and teachers and everybody, I think, although they lost everything, maybe they might have a more stronger practice of a patient. I mean, like, maybe the patient need to be also recognize it. I think that the patient, I think, again, in the life, the stability of a life, foundation of life, foundation of a spiritual practice, any kind of things, I think the practice of a patient becomes, I think, the fundamentally patient. And the patient is not reacting for the unfortunate situation. What you think? In a life, what really means a patient? Patient means non-reacting for samsara, basically. I think you are into that situation, but patient is not practice of a patient is basically not making things worse. What you think? What is a practice of a patient is making things not worse. Simple way of speaking. And what will be source of a patient? What creates the patient? What condition lose the patient? What creates the patient? Again, do you think it comes back down to when you have a strong self-cherishing? Self-cherishing, almost like depends into the degree of self-cherishing can make it impacts the practice of a human patient. Let's dig this one a little bit. What in a patient is not responding? I don't think so. Patient should not be passive. Patient should be very deep, proactive. And patient is basically the patient means way to respond, not to way to react. Can we make a difference these two? React is a slight. There's aggression, kind of reacting. There's something coming through self-grasping. Something is that outside condition is a secondary. The main condition is here. Reacting. Responding have a little bit more equanimity, isn't it? The external condition and the internal your own existence. So patient means practice of a patient means training into skillful means of responding. What do you think? What do you think? Patient means wise way of responding. What do you think?
Patience gives you some space.
Mm-hmm.
So a reaction is like that. And
Good.
Patience gives you spaciousness so that you can react without anger or malice and react maybe in a more measured way, which is not only good for your own mind, but good for the situation.
Perfect. Practicing of a patient means create the space with the situation. That's good definition. I think we can go. Create the space. I mean, like space, these terms, cognitive space, emotional space. Creating that space is a patient. What do you think?
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. Creating that space. Usually in society, in English word, reacting is considered as a good? Reacting. The word reacting.
I don't think
Which is the good part?
think about that.
Huh?
I think we just react. And we react like striking a match. We react in a positive way and in a negative way.
Okay.
We don't think about that.
Reaction is kind of muscle memory, kind of just boom. Sometimes negative, sometimes a positive.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I
Respond is much more methodical. Able to create that space. Patience should be foundation for respond, like fundamental. If we want to have a good respond, we have to require patient fundamental. So like patient itself is, I think patient is just creating that space. They is able to assess everything, see everything, listen everything. And patient itself is a respond, also patient is a fundamental foundation for positive response.
So I'm thinking about that. So if the antidote to anger is
patient.
Gain patience.
Mhm.
Is patience then not the response to the antidote?
Uh,
Or, no.
patient is,
It's quiet.
anger really stops the space
Yeah.
here and there.
Yeah.
Anger. So patient is the exact trying to create that space. Anger really close up everything. It doesn't bring any space. So patient over here is, like when you look at into the practice of the patient, basically, it's kind of like a pushing away, like pushing away, it's creating that space, anger very clear, you hurt me, boom. And the debate into the Shantidevas is just kind of like so patient, antidote of anger is a patient. And there is a Sopata, even the verse here, Shedanda Vidibame, Sopata Vukadume. There's no negative digpa as a negative scene. I will just translate it. Like anger, there's no such a that, not like anger. There's no anger like negative scene, Shedanda Sopata Vukadume. There's no patient like Katu means kind of like a practice, I think, some kind of practice. There's no practice as a like practice. Katu means some kind of like a Katu, maybe more resilient. Maybe there's no resilient like a patient. Can you say that in English? There's resilient is like what you mean in English. Resilient means something that you can restore yourself back.
You can stretch it without breaking it.
You can stretch it without breaking. Perfect. Then I think that there is no resilient like a patient, and there is no sin like a anger. Sin.
That's the end.
Shedanta vidibame, sobata vikadume. Okay. Okay.
You do a
Short dedication, yes. Okay. So we'll do a dedication before we stop, but I'll talk a little bit, since we are you're all familiar meditation of emptiness. Emptiness. What that means, what you think meditation of emptiness, meditation of emptiness is considered as from the Buddhist practice and philosophical point of view, it's almost like the silver bullet which answer all the question. It's considered as like a silver bullet. What that means in culturally.
So yeah, just a magic thing. that
Magic
cures
things.
Everything.
Take care of everything. So that's the claim. Okay, that's like wow, it's amazing. And meditation of emptiness will take care of all problem of the planet and myself, and wow, is a huge promise. So what that means, meditation of emptiness. Meditation of emptiness. I study lots of the theory and concept and these things, and I'm still kind of trying to exploring what is meditation of emptiness. I think the first exercise for meditation of emptiness is basically exercise of a cognitive mind. Because the mind is what makes the reality, what exists, what's the good and bad and everything. So I think the meditation of emptiness this is I'm just thinking about, okay? It's not absolute, but there is a specific exercise of our cognitive mind. What kind of exercise is basically philosophical terminology, matak macheba. Once you non-analyze, things look solid and solidity and vividness. Takshin chepa, once you analyze, things kind of disappeared. Things are kind of like a fall apart. So maybe for us, when you say I would do meditation, maybe something cognitive exercise that you start with the kind of neutral things. you just kind of live alone, looks like everything's solid, and then once you kind of clear pay attentioning with some kind of wisdom analytical process, it's like an atom, like just you check, you look at it when you leave it alone. And basically, once there's in this case, when there's an observer, in a scientist, I think once there's an observer, things exist. When there's no observer, things doesn't exist. Maybe meditation in emptiness in another way. Once there's a deep observer, things disappear. There's nothing way to point. When there's no deep observer, looks like there's everything together. Almost like a digital picture, once you zoom in, there's only pixels. Once you kind of zoom out, all the colorful everything. So maybe the meditation of emptiness is basically do our cognitive mind do exercise like that or not? We basically kind of read one dimension straightforward, everything reality, almost like a scanning kind of process. There's no way to zoom in and zoom out. We pretty much kind of, almost like a reading style. Our cognitive minds reads the reality, just kind of like take a picture and just kind of read. Maybe meditation emptiness is just, there's an in and out. That's Tibetan what we use like Matang Machepa and Takshin Chepa. So I think first, you do this kind of exercise again and again, and then you're remaining more into, there's a deep observer, but there's phenomena kind of disappear, just energy flow. So maybe you then more you spend into that space. Maybe that means meditation of emptiness. I'm just kind of like there is a traditional kind of, you reflect into the logic, deconstructing intrinsic reality, and just kind of like abiding into state of awareness, into absence of intrinsic reality. Okay, that's kind of like straightforward, but I think I feel maybe breaking down, maybe you have to go in and out. You cannot go straightforward one direction to dissolving the intrinsic reality, deconstructing the intrinsic. The process of deconstructing intrinsic reality is basically cognitive awareness, observing object with a kind of detail, without detail, with a detail, without detail. Basically, that means you're going, basically observing with a detail means you're trying to go beyond the surface reality, and basically then somehow it loses its own intrinsic and solidness and just kind of disappear. It's not like what it is in service. You're kind of expanding over your analysis. It's just deepening your analysis, going beyond that surface reality. And I think that kind of exercise might be journey to meditation of emptiness. Basically, stage of a cognitive observer, where you stay is a deep analysis. Deep up, I mean, like analysis word kind of strange, but it's kind of like a, okay, anyway. So meditation of emptiness. Yeah, it's fascinating, what you call that, herbal, I went to herbal.
James Webb is the new one.
Yeah, Hubble telescope, Hubble.
Hubble telescope?
Yeah, the new one that
New?
they set up that the pictures come from is the James Webb.
James Webb, okay.
Yeah, it's a replacement for the Hubble.
Hubble, okay,
It's
yeah.
just-
Must be more stronger, no?
Yeah, it's so far beyond things we can see in our mind's eye, and I keep thinking, well, enlightened people
Mm-hmm.
must have that experience. They must be able to.
Maybe it's just like the selfless nature of knowing, just taking out the I am knowing.
What did they say?
Direct perception of
What did they say? Our universe,
phenomena.
the universe that we know, is like a grain of sand
Mm-hmm.
on the beach of what they perceive.
But I was just thinking about that, the taking out the I am knowing part of it. I am knowing, the selfless nature of that.
I mean, we have an impact when we see these pictures. Makes eye kind of immediate impact. The eye is very small, and also we see we are really just glimpse very short time. When you see these things, we have an impact that. Maybe I'm just kind of like thinking. Maybe meditation of emptiness might have a similar kind of like a. Not necessarily. It's kind of transforming that kind of I as the center of the universe. Maybe somehow. Cognitively, when it's changed how you perceive the reality, then maybe the shift, ultimately shift is same like what when we see these images, then we have a kind of feeling. It's not indoctrinating, but feeling of we are just tiny, short period, glimpse. I think maybe similarly that kind of things in the meditation of emptiness, where cognitive mind experience somehow. Self doesn't become center of the universe. Maybe that perspective. Maybe how we look at it, and maybe there is a slowly kind of it's kind of like a philosophical view of a dependent or something that is not one is a center. No, I'm not the sun and staying in rest. I have to make a circle. No, we all are shifting and moving. That's maybe the dependent origination of awareness somehow. Then somehow naturally resting, I think that's, the emptiness kind of shifts and lands into the interdependent awareness. Somehow it's, we all are kind of like, this feeling of I as the center of the universe.
So Rinpoche, there's a phenomena that's, well, it's not a phenomenon at all. But what's happening is that there's some folks that are Zen traditions, and there's some folks in the Tibetan tradition, and some people that I know that are really great practitioners are engaging in taking ayahuasca, which is a hallucinogen, and people are doing this with the intention of experiencing emptiness, along with taking with Alan Wallace and different things, doing lucid dreaming, and Buddhists who are doing ayahuasca. Have you heard of this? This one person I just had a really long, 2-hour conversation with, who was saying it was profound experience of, which I'm sure it was, but it's very interesting that people in the Zen traditions and people are Buddhists are turning to ayahuasca.
Anything is possible. Anything is possible, but again, things need to be. I think these kind of things, the thing is, in sometimes they will call like a substance, concentration, mantra, and the trust. So many combinations, external and internal combinations come together, and then they use this kind of like an instinct kind of, I mean, like if the people who are 100% everything is that substance, then I'm not sure it will be long-term spiritually beneficial, because it need to be substance, concentration, mantra, and in tradition they will make several layers mandatory before you integrating these kind of things. So like, I think everybody have to. Maybe for some specific person kind of qualified to go through that kind of, I think it's good. But generally, I'm not sure how, as an experiment, maybe it's okay to, you're just trying to, I know it can be complicated. Yeah.
It's complicated. I think it's complicated, but it's just interesting. I'm hearing these senior people that I've looked up to are doing this.
My neighbor at Popan, Lama actually wanted to try LSD. About it. And someone had some. He took a couple and he said, "Give me some more." I gave him
LSD?
A whole bunch of it.
Goodness.
And he sat there for a while and started laughing and said, "This is complete foolishness." I don't think you're going to get any lasting revelation out of this. your own mind. It's much more powerful.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, let's do dedication.
now we're